Hi, everybody, and welcome to another podcast episode. This is your Weather Confessions podcast in association with Spot On Weather LLC. We are back for a sixth episode here so far this scorching hot summer. And again, I'm meteorologist Cody Barnhart, joined here as well with meteorologist Matthew Eueler. Matty, how are you doing tonight for you?
Pretty good. I think we're all doing our best to prepare for what is ahead here in the coming days as far as the heat goes.
Yeah.
So this is an excellent topic we got for everybody tonight.
Yeah, this time of year, you can't go wrong with heat, weather-related issues, hurricane season, which we covered on the last one, by the way, as well. So if you turn around and you maybe missed hurricane season, go back one episode. We've got you covered on that as well. But there's no number of topics that it's a struggle to make, right? You can get a lot of information this time of year. It's a lot of things happening. It's a very busy time of year for schedules, very busy for weather once again.
Yeah, for sure. And, what makes some of the heat even more of an issue, like some of these heat waves we get in the summer this time of year, is around holidays.
Yeah.
We got the 4th of July holiday weekend coming up. 4th happens to occur on a holiday, a weekend day.
Right.
And it's like, oh man, it's like people want to be out and about and, get out and have picnics or, all these get-togethers, maybe cookouts, fireworks, and all that.
The other thing too is everybody wants to be out on the lake, right? It's like, get out on the water, get out on the lake, enjoy, soak up the sun. Yeah. Problem with that is you don't really think about the issues, right? The heat illness sets in. You're dehydrated. You don't have the electrolytes. You haven't eaten. Don't have sugar, right? A little bit of soda or caffeine. So next thing you know, you're out, you're having a good old time. Everything's great. And then all of a sudden you're sick, right? And problems set in very, very quickly. And that's really the one danger of not only having this ongoing heat wave throughout much of the U.S., but also the fact that it's a holiday weekend and on a Saturday as well, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and so when we talk about, I'm just kind of thinking of this thing with heat in general.
Right.
It is known as a silent killer because with tornadoes, you can visibly see that destruction. Hurricanes the same way. You take shelter, you prepare your family in however the best way you can.
Sure.
But with heat, it just kind of sneaks up on you. Like, it's not really loud. It's not really like alarming.
Right.
It happens, yeah. So it's very dangerous time of year, definitely, that we're in as we head into early
July. As well, flooding is the other thing, right? Flooding is one of the deadliest, or most of the time, it's the deadliest weather phenomenon here in the U.S. Nobody thinks about it. You think tornadoes. You think severe weather, ice storms, hurricanes. You're thinking the big, large things that you see every day with the videos and the TikToks and what have you. But, flooding as well. Water washes down. Somebody gets swept off their feet. A car goes off an embankment. Somebody drowns, unfortunately. So it's all these little pieces of weather. They're just as dangerous to you and to the pets, to the kids, to anybody as any of the big, what I would call them, the fancy weather, right? The tornadoes and the blizzards and the historic cold for people that don't have a place to go and, they're out in the streets at night. It's just as dangerous, just in a little bit of a different capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. I can tell you a story of somebody, when it comes to exercising outside, as an example, in the heat. Right. I knew somebody a while back, and they were really good shape. They were a runner. But even they got into a problem with heat exhaustion and had to get emergency treatment. They overheated their body because they were running out in this very hot time of year where I was at the time.
Yeah.
So like I said, it sneaks up quick, and you really have to be mindful of, the advisories that are issued by the Weather Service office, just paying attention to what those heat indices are going to be like. So yeah, this is a great topic here this evening.
We're really going to kind of hone in on this. Not only actually, it was, we rearranged the schedule, first of all. So this was not going to be the scheduled episode for tonight, or for this week, I should say. But it actually works out because we know what's been going on in the Midwest and the Central Plains. We also know, if you've been paying attention, over in Europe, right? One of the most historic heat waves in the last couple of weeks that they've ever seen. And now here we are in the Eastern Seaboard dealing with those same impacts. So it makes only perfect sense to rearrange the schedule and throw heat waves for the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of great examples here kicking things off with these historic heat waves.
Right.
looking at the Dust Bowl era, of course, that was a big one back in the Plains states, where just clouds of dust just came in these areas. You see the years there: 1930, 1934, and 36. So that 1930s decade was, one of those like situations where you get the heat first, dries the soil, and then it results in these just these prolonged type of heat waves as that reaction between the air and the soil kind of work together like that.
Well, the other thing too, and I'm thinking back to that time frame, right? Communication.
Yeah.
We don't have phones. No one's posting videos on social media. So at that point, it's basically word of mouth. The Weather Service, of course, in the early to mid 1900s, they were formed under one organization, then kind of rebranded, became the National Weather Service. But you didn't have these pieces. You didn't have the big radar domes and all of the communication. So people back then, you lived through to 1930, maybe they're middle age. They're thinking, oh, I'll never see another one in the next 40 years that I live. Well, 4 years later, turn around 1934, and here comes another one. And then 2 years later, right after that, 1936, comes another one. So there were so many pieces back then compared to today that have switched up, right? That was a big issue. And there's not a whole lot of positives you can really take out of it. It just was what it was at the time. But that was a big issue, not only for all weather, but for the heat waves, just the haboobs, like you said, the dust storms were kind of rolling across parts of the plains. And 3 years within the 6 year span. That's impressive regardless.
Yeah. And one other thing to think about here, at that time frame, you had the major stock market crash in 1929. Yep. And the 1930s, it was slim pickings for a lot of people. Their livelihoods were impacted.
Right.
With this depression, the Great Depression that was occurring. And then you have these major heat waves leading to prolonged drought. And so the farmers in the Central Plains, it's kind of like a double whammy, like with everything going on economically, plus this on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking before we jumped on here a few minutes ago, and we have a couple other good examples of 1980, right? The great heat wave there, and also the Central and Eastern North American heat wave of 1988. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list, right? There's a number of other heat waves throughout the last 100, 150, 200 years, whatever, that have occurred. But these are just a few, really bad ones when you start pulling up numbers and the history books. But one of the most recent ones there, 2021 rather, that was the Pacific Northwest. That was British Columbia and Western Canada. And one of the things with that is, even with the advance of technology, even with communication, even with social media and the advanced forecasting that we can tell people what's coming, generally speaking, weeks and weeks out, a lot of people in the Northwest didn't have central air. We were just talking about that. Yeah. A lot of window units, a lot of no AC at all, because, you live in Seattle, you live in Portland, you live up toward the Olympic Mountains. And what's it get? 60, 70, a couple of weeks throughout the year, it's in the mid 80s, and then that's, summer. But you talked about 100 to 120 degrees, and that was deadly. That was a serious, deadly heat wave. It wasn't good, obviously.
Yeah, I remember this one well. I remember seeing the weather charts at this time frame and just how expansive the upper level ridge was in this heat dome. And we'll get more into that here shortly. But yeah, I mean, these kind of places aren't accustomed to this type of heat. 121 degrees there in British Columbia, in one of the Canadian towns that sets the all-time Canadian record. Yeah. This it was fairly persistent too. You find that a lot with these heat waves, is they tend to be fairly persistent and last a while.
And modeling typically does a good job of trying to figure out where does that bubble set up, where's that ridge of high pressure set up. But there's always the big question of, A, does it wiggle? So does somebody end up being 10 or 15 degrees warmer outside than becoming in? And also, how long does it last? Because air conditioning, electrical grids, even in today's modern world in 2026, we're dealing with it right now. Some people have power outages. Some have to go to cooling shelters, right, to kind of cool down in the evening because they've lost power. They don't have air conditioning. And the weather has a lot of strain, right? Utility work is a big deal. That was one of the issues here back in 95. We just gave you guys a nice list of at least a few examples, but the Chicago heat wave, right, of 1995, Ironically, I don't remember this. I was born in 95. So I was born in October. So this was before my time, I guess, literally. But, you had 5 days in July, right? So you're coming up on the, 31-year anniversary here this month here in July, 13th and 14th, right? They're the all-time, or the most intense, I should say. But Matt, you were telling me earlier, 105, 110 plus degree. I mean, it was that's just your actual air temperatures, 105 to 110.
Yeah, what made this heat wave even more deadly is the level of the high humidity. So, there were a couple nights here where the temperature didn't dip. It never even dropped below 80 degrees.
Yeah.
And you're talking a place that the average high is about 83, 84 degrees tops during the day. And you're sitting at 80 with all that sweltering humidity, dew points well into the mid to upper 70s, which is totally uncommon for that area.
Yep.
And so there's just no relief. Sometimes at night, you get a little bit of a break when the sun goes down. But this was a case where, your temperatures ranging between 80 and that 105 to 110 degrees with the heat indices above that 115 degrees. So so the biggest problem here with this is this really made everyone aware of some of the more vulnerable population.
Right.
If you see the number there, how many people died. In fact, so many people died that they had to use refrigerated trucks to store the bodies. The morgues were completely overflowing. And look at the 75% of the victims were 65 plus years old. So it's a matter of checking on those vulnerable populations, such as the elderly like this, making sure they're okay. The cities have established cooling centers after this heat wave, kind of unfortunately learning from this tragic event. So there were some changes within the urban areas due to this heat wave. Lack of air conditioning was a major factor in it.
Yep.
Some of the lower income neighborhoods, unfortunately, they didn't have AC at all, and they locked their windows and doors, and they refused to unlock the windows and open them up at all because of the fear of their security, of crime. So it's a real tragedy. Some of these places in the apartments, they found the victims, the temperature's up to 120 degrees. So you could just imagine that. I mean, yeah.
And you think about it as well. I mean, we're talking, some of these areas, like you mentioned, they're kind of low to moderate income, right? They're on the bottom half or the bottom third, what have you. So, security, right? Family security. And that's not something that people are going to waver at all. That's like a top priority. That's up to the top of the list. So the idea of, suffocating to death, because let's just call it what it was. It's morbid, but that's what happened, unfortunately. That wasn't in the thought process of these people. They were trying to stay safe as well, not just from the heat outside, like, staying inside, staying out of the sun, whatever, but they were trying to stay safe from the increase in crime throughout the area. And there have been a number of studies that crime rates go up, heart attacks go up. Of course, we know about heat illnesses all across the board, respiratory issues as well. All of these issues increase in number in people whenever you've got heat waves, from the crime side and the police and public service and safety to the healthcare side. So there's certainly a correlation, whether you're going from A to B or X to Y, whatever you want to call it. There's like legitimate numbers that back this up.
Yeah, for sure. And it just, one of the biggest things about these heat waves too is they're usually accompanied by the higher pressure, and so the winds are very light.
Yeah.
So winds act to basically take the excess heat away from our bodies, and when the winds are so light, it's just not happening.
See, and that's the hard part, because it's very much as, you get to that point where, like, you just want the breeze, you want the flow to anything at that point to try to cool you down a little bit, and a lot of times you just don't have it.
Yeah. You can see here what you brought up, this O'Hare, from the Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Yep.
These were the readings over that Chicago heat wave time period from the 12th to the 16th of July. And really, 104, and then the low 81. And look at that, low 83 on the 14th. That's what I was talking about. Like, there was just no relief from this. And with the peak heat index, look at the dew points in the far right. Now,
corn sweat, genuinely.
Yeah. dew point being that measure of low level moisture, and the higher that value goes, the more muggy the air mass. And you just don't, think about it. You're trying to sweat, and you have the sweat on your layer of skin, and the air is so saturated with moisture, there's nowhere for that sweat to go off your skin. So it just stays there.
I saw Doug Hammer in DC this afternoon. I saw him talking about it on Facebook Live, and that's the biggest thing, right? We're talking about extreme heat in the summertime. I can have sweat up and down my arms, and you can be sweating and cooling off a little bit, but it's not what your body typically does. If it's springtime and the dew point's 61, 62, low 60s, it's getting to be a little humid out there, but it's not too terribly bad. When you start talking about dew point 75, 80, 85, your body can't compensate for that. We're just people, right? We're just a human body is all we are. And you can only do so much. And there gets to be a point where your body just either starts to shut down or everything becomes very sluggish. And that's exactly what happens. That's when we say extreme heat, you talk about, out in Phoenix. Well, guess what? A, it's a dry heat. And B, these people live there. They're used to 120, 130 every day during the summer with dew points in the 30s and 40s. This is a whole different ballgame here now.
Yeah, I remember when I was passing through the Mojave Desert.
You want summer, there's a place to go.
This was in late June, going through the Mojave Desert. And I remember we stopped at a little convenience store to get a drink. And I asked the lady, I went in there and said, wow, it's hot out there. I basically made the comment to her, and she's like, oh, this is cool. It's 117 today.
It's only 117.
I'm thinking to myself, wow, what this woman must live through every day. But like you said, it's a drier heat too.
Yes.
So you kind of have a little bit of maybe that evaporation off your skin because of the dryness to the air.
Well, you start talking about late July into August. If we were talking Iowa and Missouri, Illinois, the Corn Belt kind of section out there, your hometown area, right where you're from, you start talking about
evapotranspiration.
Yes, sorry. This is water. This should clearly be some extra highly caffeinated beverage at this hour. But yes, you start talking about that, and then it's all of a sudden, it's like, well, why is it's 91, 92? Well, guess what? It feels like 115, literally. That's why. You've got more soil. That's wet. We're going to talk about that in a second. You've got root systems. You've got corn that's now tall, right? You're almost a tassel at that time of year. You got all that moisture in those corn stalks, and where does it go? Up into the atmosphere, and it creates that mugginess, and it's a revolving cycle. Just like the sun goes down in the evening, comes back up in the morning. It's one after another until you get a break in the pattern, the weather pattern. That's the only way to really fix it. You didn't have a whole lot of that 95. I mean, this is the mid-level charts here for all of our weather geeks, 500 millibar charts here that you're looking at, the overhead view, and you can see that kind of closed contour, that ring there, right over central Illinois. I would say, looking at the maps today, probably back around St. Louis, east central Missouri there, and where you get the dark reds and the dark purples. That's where you've got that compressing, sinking air. All of that air comes down. All of that air starts to turn around and just becomes stagnant over top of that region. And to your point, Matt, if there's no wind, if there's no movement or airflow or anything, you're basically cooking. You're what basically dinner felt like for me 2 hours ago in the oven. That's pretty much what happens, and that's what's happening outside right here, right now.
Yeah, this is one of those typical patterns, and with this huge sprawling heat dome or upper high pressure, directly beneath the upper high itself, like you pointed out, is where you're going to get that greatest heating. And one of the other things, in addition to the very light winds, is you just don't get much in the way of any kind of clouds. Usually on a summer day, afternoon especially, you'll get those puffy cumulus clouds that pop up. Right. And maybe you can muster up a thunder shower. And we've all been under the thunder shower before, where you get that nice cool downdraft coming out of the cloud, and your temperature, it's just such a nice relief, cooling air coming down. Maybe you drop the temperature 15 degrees underneath the thunderstorm, but not in this case. This thing just sits there for days on end. And And, all the storms are going to basically be diverted up and over the top of this thing. We talk about the Ring of Fire. We talk about, other
classic
types of
ridge riders as well, right? They go up and around.
Exactly. Yep. Over the top of that. So, there just wasn't much relief. It's sunny. There's hardly any clouds. So it's very intense.
Yeah. To your point, you mentioned, right, the sinking air, it just kind of sits there. It sits over top of you. It's intense. And it's also the entire way through the atmosphere, right? So sometimes we talk about low level moisture, right? Sometimes during severe weather, fog, right? You drive down the road and the mountaintops, the ridges, you can see some of the low clouds that hang over, so you can see the different layers of the atmosphere. But this is one of those setups where what you have at the surface is the same thing you have up top, and vice versa the whole way through, which means there's no break and it's relentless. And that's what made the 1995 Chicago heat wave, that's what made it so bad, because you had duration, you had relentless, you had all the other variables that went into it, people locking themselves in their home, communication, all these other things. But the reason that it was so intense, the reason that it was so long in duration, was because this just basically stalled out. And where this was, unless you'd find some way to shift it, it's not going to move until you can find the way to shift it. And that's what happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I said, this is just one of those stagnant weather patterns. Your jet stream is displaced well to the north of this. Right. And so that jet stream is your dividing line with the cooler air to the north of the jet stream, and you're well south of that jet stream. It retreats up into Canada, typically southern Canada, the northern U.S. border during the summer season already. And then you just get this huge expansive heat dome like this. And it's just a recipe for, that's one of the biggest factors with these heat waves is duration, right? Like,
it really is.
Maybe 1 or 2 days you get like near record highs, but then you get that break, but not with this setup.
No, with this kind of setup, you're talking about just and it builds in quick. That's the other thing that we haven't talked about is you'll have 2 or 3, decent days, not too bad. Summer, of course, you got to be relatively decent. And then you get like one transition day. And when it builds in, and then from there out, that longevity that you're talking about, that's where you're stuck. So you don't have a lot of time here to be prepped and ready to go. We're not talking about a winter storm where it's like, well, it's Monday, it looks like Friday night or Saturday, we might have something coming up the coast to watch type of thing. And you've got 4 or 5 days that you can kind of figure this thing out. We have the general idea 4, 5, 6 days out that something's building. The jet stream is north, subtropical jet is further south. So you're bringing in that increase in moisture. You're bringing in that southerly flow, or that kind of compressional heating is what we call that as well. But you don't have the exact numbers, right? Just like a snowstorm 5 days out. I don't know how much snow there's going to be. I don't know the temperature, but there's something in there. But when you get to this, to your point at the beginning, the silent killer, it's a different ordeal when you're dealing with this, I think, than when you're dealing with something that, again, it's pretty and fancy.
Yeah, and again, I think you hinted at this earlier with the position of that pressure system too. That really makes a difference.
Well, the other thing too is trees, right? Trees, grass, concrete, asphalt, impermeable surfaces. Makes a big difference, not just temperature-wise, but also just the overall scope of things, the whole impact.
Yeah. And we cover this with Mike Myers when he was a guest on the podcast. We mentioned about,
I think that was quite a while ago.
Yeah. And we talked about it with the soil content, right? Like when you have a lack of rainfall, you get a much drier soil, and these intense heat waves tend to develop over that drier soil. And think about this: if the soil is wet, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here, but like when you have a wetter surface, like you have trees, like you're showing here, the rural area there on the left, the countryside, versus the city over on the right. That's a big difference in heating. The wetter, more vegetated areas there in the countryside are going to, you're going to be taking that incoming solar radiation and evaporating that water from those plants and stuff. And so you go into the city where you have concrete, asphalt, everything just more intensely heats up because it goes, basically the sun goes directly into heating that type of landscape in the city.
It goes back as well. It also goes back here to Go back to when we were kids. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the best examples are the color of the shirt that you wear. You
Yeah.
walk outside, you have a dark color shirt on. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, it's really hot, right? That dark color is absorbing that incoming solar radiation.
Yes.
So your body, the material, this is all heating up. Your body's getting hotter. If I wear a light yellow, or say a white T-shirt as well outside, that's going to reflect back, toward the sky a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to absorb a little bit, but compared to a color like this, or even to your light blue, you're not going
Yeah.
to absorb with a white or a light color compared to a darker color. So go back to the point of the lighter colors, it reflects more light, the trees, right? It
Yes.
keeps things cooler. There's more shade. There's
Yes.
more ability to keep the concrete and the asphalt temperatures at least somewhat even keel compared to one of these metros, New York, Boston, Chicago, DC, Philly, up and down 95, wherever you want to go, it's concrete, it's asphalt, it's buildings, it's also windows. A lot of that redirecting light, but it's very hot because it's coming in, it's bouncing off the window. I mean, if you put your hand up along a window, right, you feel the heat coming through the window. So that's entering homes and businesses. So all of that heat coming into the window can get reflected to some extent. So you've got all of these little things happening here compared to the grass and the trees and any green space. And a lot of these bigger cities, again, forestry, as far as like forest conservation, park planning, park management, natural resources, all of these like revolving doors here, those are big deals. When you're talking about municipal planning, you're talking about green space planning. I mean, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things I noticed. Every substance has a different heating capacity,
Right.
and you're kind of talking about the windows and how that reflects some of the incoming sunlight. I could literally go outside right now and touch these bricks out here, and they will still feel very warm from the day's heat. They tend to hang on to that heat longer. And that kind of gets into the city talk, the urban area with the urban heat island, where you got more of those bricks and that cement, which tends to retain the heat longer as well. So you don't cool off as quickly overnight either in these big city areas.
And that's the other thing too, is, then you go out the next morning, and the one key thing we always say is late evening or very early morning. Anything outside, get the dogs out on the walk, get the trash taken out if you're going to go for a run, but that's when you want to get it done. Yeah. But when you don't have any relief overnight, you get up the next morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, it's already 78, 79, 80 degrees.
Yeah.
By 10:30, 11 o'clock, it's 92 degrees. So, and you're going, you know what I mean? Like, you're going right back toward the top of the ladder here. So the overnight conditions, one would almost argue that they are almost equally as impactful than during the day, because during the day, people are working for the most part. Yeah. You're running the air conditioning, you're staying inside, you've got the sun outside, so it's easy to avoid that. But you want to get outside early. You want to get outside late, but because of what's ongoing throughout the day, it still impacts that overnight time frame.
Yeah, and think about these jobs. Something as simple as somebody cutting their grass and doing their lawn work. What time of the day is best to do that? And also some of these jobs, which are outdoor jobs, like construction workers,
right?
They're out in this pretty much all year long, the conditions. And so just in the summertime with the heat, I mean, just think about how much hydration they got to get, constantly, drinking the water just to stay hydrated. And it's so very important to keep that water level in your body higher.
Well, it's also important to avoid, people forget about this as well, but sodas,
yes,
right? And we're all guilty of it. Summertime, I want a margarita at dinner. It's been a long week, whatever. But when it's this hot outside and you haven't had the electrolytes and you haven't had the food and the water, soda, alcohol, the sugary drinks, the stuff that's not going to hydrate you, if you have to question it, throw it to the side. And listen, I'm as guilty as anybody else. I want that margarita too. You got to get that water in your body first.
No, that is so accurate, that statement, because like you said, you just go about your business and you're drinking the sodas and the sugar drinks like that.
Yeah.
Even some of the teas and stuff. or sugary lemonades. That's always a refreshing drink on a hot summer day. But yeah, I mean, you're basically, you really want to get that water in. That's the most important thing, to stay hydrated. And then maybe even electrolytes as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the body armors were a little bit of the Gatorade. There's the can't even think of how many brands anymore. There's all kinds of drinks, right? But balance out the sugar with the electrolytes. I know a lot of people also have said that they want to avoid some of the really sugary stuff.
Yeah.
That's like we said, you want to do that, but you got to have a little sugar in you, because remember, your body still runs on sugar. So you need a little bit of that inside that body.
I'm just laughing because I'm trying to not take it to a personal level here, but yeah,
well, we know you're trying to avoid some of the sugar right now, but you also got to have a little bit of that in your body.
Yeah, you do, because it's almost like one of those fuel type things in the body. So you can't just go cold turkey on it unless you want to be a walking zombie. But yeah,
I mean, The Walking Dead had like 7 or 8 good seasons. So I'm just saying, you never know what's going to happen.
There you go.
Oh my! Well, okay. Let's move on for another topic here. Another piece of the topic is we're talking about the soil moisture just the last couple of minutes, but this is a really good illustration here. On the left side, you've got the dry soil. You've got the yellow arrows coming in, orange arrows going out. That means that you've got some very warm air, of course, very warm temperatures as well. That sunlight, it's coming into the ground. But as you mentioned, Matt, with the dry soil, and a lot of times that also is typically during a drought or increasingly drought-like period of time. Which means the ground is drier and you don't have a lot of grass as is, or it's very, very brittle. So that's where those orange arrows are coming out. So the temperature is rising here as the soil dries out even further, and then also increases the temperature compared to on the right with the grass. Again, same idea. Yellow arrows are coming in. It's very warm. Notice what's going out, though. You got a green arrow, a light orange arrow, and a dark orange arrow. So it's not all quite as warm. It may not make a huge difference, but there's certainly a difference there. And again, when you're the dog or the cat or the kids are out on the playground or going for a walk or whatever, that means, a lot for hands and feet and puppy paws and whatever's on that surface, right? That's a big deal. Let's not underplay that one.
Yeah, I just want to mention one thing briefly on that one there. Dry air heats and cools 5 times more efficiently than wet or moist air.
Right.
So that's why places like Phoenix regularly get, in the triple digits during this time of year, is because the soil is dry outside of the monsoon type rains that you might get. Right. But in general, it's dry. Any desert areas, if anybody's got any experiences in desert areas, it'll be super hot during the day, but it cools off so efficiently at night.
So you mean 60 at night, no problem. It'd be 120 during the day.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I just want to make that point about the effectiveness of dry air heating and cooling 5 times more efficiently than a moist air.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I don't think people often think about that necessarily. So again, we always say the humidity, the dew point makes a difference. Just another layer to the onion, if you will, of how much of a difference that it is on the impact there. But we also have these things called marine heat waves, and we're going to have Scott Yuckness on probably late fall, I'm guessing, toward the end. He's a gentleman that deals specifically, for the most part, in marine heat waves. But essentially, the 30-second elevator pitch, if you will, is you take a look at Europe, right, over the last couple of weeks, and all of the dark reds and oranges, that is significantly above average water temperatures compared to where they should be this time of year. And you get into that dark red, burgundy, almost a brown shading, and you're 10, 15 degrees warmer. So think about, it's just say, for example, it's August. We're going to the beach. Water temps are 80, 85. How about 100 degrees? That's, it seems like, 10 or 15, whatever. Put it into perspective that we understand it, in person. And that's what they're dealing with. And the heat wave we are dealing with now, 2-3 weeks ago, started over in Europe. This is where it began with the marine heat waves.
Yeah. So, I mean, just imagine, like you said, this well above normal water sitting right next to a land area. And, generally what you get across the mid-latitude specifically is you get development of these huge heat domes next to these anomalously warm water areas. Scott does a lot of great work on sharing his thoughts about marine heat waves around the globe, and they coincide very well with these heat waves over the continental areas, these land masses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just think about a bath water, very warm in a bathroom, and you
Yep.
you feel that warmth above that bath water compared to if that water was much cooler, colder bath water. It makes a big difference on the overlying air.
Well, think about too, we talk about the Gulf, right? The Gulf's a great example because everybody heads down to the Gulf Shore come July and August. And when you get to that time of the year, you're talking bathwater,
Yeah.
tropics close to home, September, especially if you're in New Orleans, if you're back toward Pensacola City, Miami, anybody in between there, you're talking close to home.
Yeah.
But what's the water temperature down there? It's bathwater. It's 85, 90, 95 degrees. And it may feel great, but I mean, think about in the winter. You're talking about even by Memorial Day weekend, late May, maybe beginning of June, you on the East Coast, what are your water temps? 50 something, 60 something?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big jump upward, and it takes a long time to come down when you get post Labor Day, right? Even into October, early November, still pretty warm. And that's how much latent heat or how much energy and how much heat is in that water. It just takes a while. Think about boiling a pot of water on the stove, right? Takes forever. You're sitting here, you're waiting, you're doing your thing. Next thing you know, all of a sudden, boom, bubble, bubble, bubble. But so when you get there, it's great, but it's getting to that point, and then when it pops, it's like, watch out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we've seen a lot of European heat waves recently due to this anomalous warmth. I remember, I think it was 23. The UK was having an anomalous heat wave, and I think it's because there's a marine heat wave right offshore of the United Kingdom,
Right.
and that led right to that major heat wave. So yeah, I remember that one well. Europe's had quite a higher frequency of heat waves lately, it seems.
Yeah, and it's the areas that sometimes you don't expect. You think about pleasant weather, 60s, 70s, okay, some 80s, low 80s, and they're not a big deal. But it's the really big heat waves that are getting these places. And to circle back around here from what we talked about in the beginning, some of these countries and places and mountainous regions, they don't have a lot of central air because that's not their climate. That's not what they do. They don't live in the Amazon. They don't live in Phoenix. So you're talking about larger impacts. You're talking about countries that have a lot more outdoor activities and more of an outdoor lifestyle. Let's be honest, from the U.S. is not one of the most overall, right, outdoor lifestyle countries. So all of these little things add up. And again, Europe, everyone's been getting them, but it's the places that don't typically see that kind of heat on, a daily thing, a daily, routine.
Yeah, I mean the Baltic region, Norway, Sweden, those areas, up further north, they definitely aren't accustomed to this, these kind of heat waves. I was reading something this past weekend that said that they were spraying the bridges in Denmark.
I've heard about that. Yep.
Yeah, because they were getting so hot. So even think about this, like not only human comfort, but like what are the materials made of? Like every material, the construction, how things are built, they definitely take into account the weather, especially with the temperatures and what they normally average throughout the course of the year.
I mean, you also have to save money. I mean, the other thing too is we haven't even talked about it. And a lot of times money is one of the first things that, people mention because without money, the buck just stops. But for countries to lose steel girders, to have railroad track ties kind of melting, right? And we've seen a number of those here. I think the UK one in 23 was notorious for that, where the trains and the subway systems, they literally crumbled. And a couple of the subways actually derailed. You're talking about infrastructure that is unable to withhold or to withstand the weather conditions. Money is a big thing over there as well, as it would be anywhere else.
Yeah, and one other thing, places, and I've lived out in California before. There was unusual heat out there, and I remember the one thing they always worry about brownouts.
Yep.
Where the power grid goes down because of that demand due to heat waves.
And it's consistent.
Yeah. So you have places that aren't normally accustomed to getting very hot. And then, the power grid's not designed to like cover that much demand and be able to sustain itself. So that's another factor of heat waves in society.
There's a lot. There really are so many, but one of the biggest things we talk about, regardless of all these other impacts, which are important, do not want to certainly, put any lower level of expectation on those or any kind of criteria. But one of the biggest things we talk about that's even more important to just our bodies alone is the heat indices. Everybody's like, oh, it's muggy, it's hot, but it's a heat index. That's the big thing, is what it feels like outside and what your body is either able to or maybe not able to at that point, basically withstand. So this is the Weather Service heat index chart. Many people may have seen this before. Again, temperature across the top left to right. They've got relative humidity here, top to bottom on the left side. The other thing, though, too, there's a caveat with this, and I love everything the Weather Service does, but I wish we could re-rack this to put the dew points on the left, because remember, it's not about the humidity, it's about the dew points. And, just for an example with the humidity, not even putting the dew points in here, let's go 90 degrees at the top and go down with 60% humidity. You go across to find where you meet in the middle, and it's 100 degrees. That's what your heat index is, right? So, it doesn't take a lot as a whole, but when you factor in, what we're talking about now, and even the heat wave in 95 in Chicago, where we really started things off tonight, you had dew points that, were 75, 80 degrees. And that was enough to unfortunately be deadly and cost people their lives. Again, that's one of those deals, Matt, where communication is big. That's one of the things where social media does come into play, and it helps, because when you're talking heat wave and staying safe and all kinds of graphics and this and that, that is one big benefit here, is being able to have mass production and quickly getting that right information out to the people that are in need of it.
Yeah, that's where I think communication obviously is very important in this scenario. Being able to get that messaging out, and the Weather Service uses a lot of different criteria. You may hear it on your local news: excessive heat watches, excessive heat warnings, heat advisories. These are different criteria based on these definitely heat indices, how hot it's going to feel in your location. And so those vary from location to location. Not every city in the country is going to follow the same standards, but that wording and that communication is so very important to the public.
And that doesn't just go for the heat information and this time of year, right? We're talking about all kinds of weather, all times of year. Same thing goes in winter. I chuckle and I laugh when I see, central and eastern North Carolina under a winter weather advisory for coating to 1 inch of snow and maybe some sleet, or coating to 2, where, here across parts of PA and Maryland, the Virginias and the Mid-Atlantic, we're talking, at 2 to 4, maybe 3 to 5. Winter storm warning criteria is about 6 inches. And they're down there with a coating to 1 inch or so. And it's like, all right, schools are shut down for 2 days and you get this much snow. But that's the point, is it's a different lifestyle. The expectations a little bit different. So it changes throughout the geographic regions. And again, the same idea here with the heat indices as well. The impact on people in, say, Vermont, right, or northern Maine, it's going to be a lot easier to overtake someone's body than if you're down in Mississippi or Alabama, where it's just swampy as can be, 8 or 9 months out of the year.
Yeah, I can recall a personal experience when I was living down in South Mississippi, and it was just, it's so humid. The dew points are always high, and temperatures are it's uncomfortable, actually, a lot of cases down there. I'm just trying to do outdoor activities because of how high the dew points are and how muggy it feels down there along the immediate Gulf Coast. And then I remember coming up to Virginia, and then we were talking with the neighbors one time, and I said, "Oh, this feels so nice." And the neighbor's like, "What? Are you kidding me? This is not nice. This is hot for us." And coming from,
you're laughing in their face.
Yeah, what I'm getting after here is that how things feel to one person feel different to another person depending on where you live. And so if you're coming from a very muggy and hot place to a cooler place, that might feel good to you, but for the local people that have lived in that place, it might be a heat wave to them.
Yeah, it's just like Miami. If you're born and raised in Miami and you're 50 or 60 years old, you've done tropical storms, you've done hurricanes, you've done storm surge, you've done coastal flooding.
Yep.
Move to Kansas for the last 20 years of your life. I bet you 9 times out of 10, everybody you meet in that first day, no idea. So it's either you know how to deal with it or you really don't. It's just one of those things. It either is or it isn't.
Yep. Yeah. You hit it right on the head there. Yep.
Yeah. The one thing, though, that regardless whether it is or isn't, is everybody needs to, and again, kind of circling back here real quick to what we were talking about earlier, know about your heat exhaustion, know about heat stroke. Both are dangerous. Both can be deadly. Heat exhaustion, a little bit lower on the totem pole. Of course, heat stroke higher as well. Of course, when I call 911, immediate action there with first responders needed. But the heat exhaustion, again, and coming back to, the holiday weekend here, early, mid parts of July, you've got a 4th of July on a long weekend. Most businesses are closed on Friday, or we're closed on Friday here before the holiday. And people are out at the lake. They're having a party on the river. They're doing, what they want to do. They're having a great time. But then that heat exhaustion hits because you forgot to drink water or you don't have electrolytes in you. You haven't eaten any solid food. So you got to cool that body down progressively. You can't do it right away because you'll shock your body. And that can cause a lot of other issues.
Yeah. Actually, before we got going on this podcast, found out that one of the fireworks shows is going to be canceled.
Really?
Because of the heat. Yeah, because of the heat index being so high.
Wow.
I don't know if it'll be rescheduled or what their plan is, but for the 4th of July itself, I believe it's been canceled. So
that is the first I've ever heard of that. I have actually not heard of that. And for rain and storms, of course, that's a typical thing you watch for every year. But for heat like this, and people aren't going to like it. But at the end of the day, for you and I as meteorologists, it's the right call. Do we like it personally? No, not really. I mean, I want to go see some things get blown up in the air. But I mean, listen, as a meteorologist, I'm looking at this from a public safety standpoint, and I can't be upset about it. It might suck from the other end, but it's the right call from the public safety side.
And think about, like, in conjunction with fireworks shows this time of year, I know a lot of the towns have like their carnivals or their fairs. So that's a lot of time spent outdoors as well, just being out. Mm-hmm. Let's say you get there late morning at this carnival and then you stay all the way through the fireworks show in the evening. I mean, you're out there in that sun for quite a considerable period of time.
All day long, yeah.
Yeah, and so one thing I want to mention here on this one is heat exhaustion versus heat stroke. One of the biggest differences in it is heat stroke. The person is no longer sweating.
Yes, that we should mention that. It's a great.
So that is a huge difference there, and so you definitely a heat stroke. That is definitely a deadly type of situation.
Essentially, that point, your body. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your body no longer can sweat. Like you literally, your body is shutting down to the point where if you don't get help, worse things are going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, everybody's body is smart. It's like a smart system. All the organs. The more vital organs are going to be shutting. Some of the less major organs will be shutting down. Less vital organs first, to try to conserve what's left. With the more vital organs. So, I mean, the way the body works is amazing, but it has these built-in mechanisms that shut down when it's pushed to the extreme.
Yeah, and it's one of those things when, unfortunately, I guess it's a double-edged sword. Fortunately, most of us don't deal with that on a daily basis, and a lot of us don't deal with heat stroke at any point in our life. Heat exhaustion, I think sometimes we can all say at one point we're kind of here, we're teetering on the edge. Yeah. But it's one of those that until you go through it, you don't realize the impact. It's like, oh, I hear this, I hear that. Like, you're understanding it, but you're not until you go through it, and that's not something you want to go through. But it is one of those where that's what sometimes rings a bell. And we're trying to get people to not have to get to that point so the bell can still get rung, right? Do it before, but don't go through the actions of it.
Right. And, we haven't even talked about athletes that play outside in some of these conditions, baseball players, as well as we have the World Cup going on right now.
Yeah.
So imagine coming from a country that's not used to getting that hot and having to play in those conditions. That's taxing on the body.
It's rough. You think about the Little League World Series up in Williamsport, right, in August. And a lot of times, of course, we know Central PA in August, very much prone to very hot days, dog days of summer. It's hot, it's humid, overnight temperatures are not cool by any means, and the kids are out there day after day, hour after hour. It's a lot. But the other thing that is a lot, and we were talking about this before coming on, we hate that we have to bring this up, but it is the reality, right, of the situation, is vehicular heat stroke, especially with children, is the majority of them for pediatric kids left in cars, right? Always have to make sure you check the back seat of cars. The one thing that I think people often forget is kids, they're very mischievous. They like to unlock doors. They like to grab things because we all did it as a kid, right? But that also means they can get in the back of the car. They can reach up and they can unlock that door and think, "Ooh, I can jump inside." Well, guess what? At that point, if you don't have a clue and you think, another family member is inside with the kids, you don't think to look, and you go to the store and then come out and realize there's a kid in the car. That is a story that we hear, year in and year out. So just check the back seat is the point of this. There's a lot of these numbers. Every one of them can be preventable. You're talking about since 98, over 900 kids have passed away in a hot car. It's 900 kids plus that should still be here today, is all I'm going to say on that one.
Yeah, and you can see that table there on the right-hand side here showing that how the temperature inside of a vehicle changes over time. Yeah. It doesn't take a very long time there, and you look at the temperature ranges. For example, let's say the outside air temp's 90 degrees, and within a parked car, your temperature in 10 minutes is up to 109 degrees.
Right. So, the other thing I'm thinking too is, and I'm looking at the percentages there, the 48, 32, 8, and 3, 32%. So a third of these, just a third, between 80 and 90 degrees. When we sit down and think about it, just from a temperature standpoint, that's really not all that hot. 90 degrees, yeah, it's getting hot, but really 80, 85, 86, that's a regular day this time of year. So of course you factor in indoor temperature of cars, humidity, etc. But from a temperature standpoint, again, I don't want people to think about this as, well, it's on 110 or 115, so there's no danger, right? 80, 85, 75, there's still a hazard here that needs to be brought up and needs to have a conversation about.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to have that conversation. Like you said, most importantly, check the back seat before you get out of the car.
Right. Absolutely. But also make sure, in addition to that, I love this graphic. I threw this out to people. I don't know. What was it, about 2 months ago? Somewhere a couple months ago. But remember the pets, right? We're always saying, and we're always trying to get the dogs out early in the morning or very late in the evening, avoiding the peak sun. Matt, to your point, you mentioned earlier, you go outside right now, the bricks on the house or on the sidewalk or what have you are still very, very warm from the major heat, the extreme heat that we've been dealing with for today. But just take a look here. And these are some great numbers as well from the University of Georgia, from their extension office. I have to give them a lot of credit. Look at even at, 11 o'clock in the morning, mid to late morning. In the grass temperature there in the shade, it's 82 degrees at 10 a.m. Just by the air temperature, it's 82 in the shade, but it's 90 there for the air temperature. You get onto that, cement, 99 degrees, red brick. You're talking 105 and 103 for asphalt, for blacktop, and it's up and up from there. And that's just 10 a.m. So, again, if it's too hot, rule of thumb is if it's too hot to touch with your bare hand, it's too hot for the dogs or the cats or whoever to go outside and walk. So if you can touch it and it's too hot, either the grass or back inside is what I would say. Yeah.
And you don't think about specifically like the paw pads of the dogs as, on that pavement. It's like walking barefoot and, you're exposing your skin to that hot pavement. Just imagine doing that and what the dog must feel with the paw pads.
We all did it as kids, right? You go out and play like hopscotch and you're jumping on the asphalt or the concrete. How long can I stay on here until my feet start to burn? Because as a 7 or an 8-year-old, you think it's fun. You now look back and you laugh at yourself, but in the moment, it's a good time. But you think about the dogs, right? Or the pets in general. And like you said, walking out onto the concrete or the asphalt or the grass. And just, next time that you're out with the extreme heat, feel that. Take the back of your hand and go to an area in like with the sun, like on the asphalt. then
Yeah.
feel like the either or the concrete in the sun or the shade, and feel that with the back of your hand, and then go over and touch the grass and just feel the differences. I think people would be seriously surprised at
Hmm.
what temperature radiates out of that, because it's not just absorbing the sun, it's emitting some heat as well, that those temperatures are
Yeah.
giving back to the atmosphere.
Yeah. And think about a dog, right? Like walking over a heated pavement too.
Yep.
They're much lower to the ground. I mean, we have the luxury, of course, being 6 feet on average above the ground.
6 feet. Who we measured somebody for this study? 6 feet. You let me know what that feels like.
well, yeah. I mean, I've heard this type of stuff before too from other folks too. But
Right.
anyway, so I mean, just imagine the dog being so close to the ground though, and just having all that heat. Just they're so close. I mean, they start panting as a cooling mechanism.
Yep.
They got the fur, of course, and so they don't have a luxury of cooling off by, like wearing light colored clothing or that type of thing. So,
and it depends, especially different breeds, right? Like my parents have 2 huskies. I mean, you can shed down some of the fur, you can kind of trim away undercoats, but at the end of the day, those 2 dogs can't. Once it's 45 or 50, they can't stand it, and it's just part of the breed. I mean, they're made to be out when it's 15 degrees and snow. Every day is Christmas for them, from Thanksgiving to March, early April. So there's just a lot of variables here. We want people to be aware, want people to be safe. We also want the pets as well to be happy and healthy, as much as when they go back in the house to when they came out of the house at the beginning as well. But really, I think for the most part, that's pretty much everything, Matt, that we were covering today. Am I missing anything for us here on this one?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of the main themes throughout this. Just important to always pay attention to the local heat advisories or heat warnings, and try to limit your outdoor exposure. Definitely not going out in the afternoon hours at the max heating time of day. Like you mentioned earlier, try to accomplish those type of things earlier in the morning or in the evening after sunset.
Right. And also, again, just as a one more reminder, be very mindful of the surface temperatures, the concrete, the pavement, even as the sun's going down.
Yeah.
And even early in the morning, even after the sun has come up and it's like 8:30 and it's still not horrible just yet. Again, those pavement temperatures, those surface temperatures are still going to be very warm, regardless of whether it's grass, asphalt, concrete, or brick or something else. As well. So it's summertime. We want everyone to be happy. We want everyone to be healthy and out and enjoying time. The kids to enjoy their time as well. But we want everyone to also be able to do it in a manner when we can all be here and say that we're going to do it again next summer, and doing it the right way as well. So timing worked out well on this one for your 6th episode here on the Weather Confessions podcast. Once again, in association with Spot On Weather LLC. We will see everybody here for episode 7. And I think we are pretty much set. We are going to be shooting for something with weather and the medical side of things as well. So I know a lot of people often talk about having issues with, sinus issues, right? And with the front swinging through, arthritis, a lot of people with their knees, hips, right? Elbows and whatnot. So that's a big issue. We've talked about some of the heat issues tonight. So another really interesting one here coming up in just a couple of weeks from the medical side of things. Yeah,
that'll definitely be interesting to get that kind of perspective for sure. Yep. So we certainly hope everybody has a great 4th of July. I know you'll see this after, but hopefully you have had a great 4th of July. Right. And everybody's staying cool and doing their best with the heat wave.
And take an extra splash in the lake or the river or the ocean. Just cool off for 5 seconds.
There you go.
There we go. All right, guys. Everybody have a great time again. Hopefully you had a great 4th, and we will see you back here once again for episode 7 here coming very, very soon. Everybody have a great time.
Have a great night, everybody.